In the near future, there will be a day that when TALTalk will come and say, the purpose for which we started is over, we are dissolving this. If you look at why every speaker came here, there was a challenge. Why is Vikalp Sansaki there? Because somebody is not respecting a girl child. Why Helpage is there? Because some families are not taking care of their previous generation. If everybody did what they are supposed to do, none of us need to be here. And that is a hope. Maybe in 20 years, 30 years, 50 years, 100 years, that is the hope with which we stand here. And we believe, if you plan for a year, plant rice. If you plan for a decade, plant a tree. But if you plan for 100 years, provide lifetime education to people. It's education that is going to make a big difference. Unfortunately, this is a note I wrote many years ago for myself. It is important to know what one is capable of. And it is even more important to know what one is using one's capabilities for. I might be good in communicating. I can use this communication skill to pull down somebody. Or I can use the same communication skill to develop somebody. What am I using my capabilities for? I may have a lot of wealth. What am I using that wealth for? For equity or for accumulation? Or to show off my wealth? So therefore, there is a need for each of us to understand what is that we are going to use our capabilities for. I make this distinction very, very clearly. There's a huge difference between qualified people and educated people. Today we have millions of qualified people, very few educated people. And that perhaps is a big cost. You read the news, somebody cutting somebody's body into 100 pieces. So, I mean, the wars that go on, what is the cost? If we were educated, would we do all this? Certainly not. And that becomes a challenge. And what is the challenge we are trying to? This is the challenge we are trying to address. And the need of the hour is life education. It is believed that 200 years ago, in our Gurukul, 99% of education was on character, 1% was on subject and skills. And today, if we go to any school, all that we are concerned is, what's the mark my child got in math, physics, chemistry? Nobody is asking, is my child a better human being? Shailendra was saying, at the end of the day, the goal is to become a good human. But who is bothered about it? Why there's a need for Robin Hood Army? Because somebody is not doing something. And therefore, there is a need for a volunteer. And the movement is catching up. I only wish that we don't need to do somebody else's job and each of them do their own job. So what is the focus of life education? Context sensitive. Are we all capable of doing what is needed than what we want? Do we have the ability to discriminate in the right way, what to do, what not to do? Are we in a position to understand and apply what we learn? Particularly in the AI and generative AI, if you are going to accumulate knowledge, you will be irrelevant very soon. Please be aware of that. Our ability to understand and apply knowledge is going to be a very, very key important thing for any good education. Are we working with cause or are we working with symptoms? If we really see why there are so many social challenges, social issues, because somewhere at the root level, there are some inequalities happening. Do we teach them how to integrate everything that they are learning? If they are not, I truly believe that knowledge that cannot be put to use is better off in a book than in my brain. Why should I waste my brain cell to carry that information? Birth of EFIL. It was very interesting. Like everybody, I finished my master's, I got a job, and I was posted to this very city. I worked in a company called HAL. And I had a boss with whom I used to fight every other day. But being a reflective student and inquiring about life, when I looked around, there were people who could get along with my boss. Some of us had some trouble. And therefore I said, look, if he's a problem, everybody should have had a problem with him. The very fact that some have and some don't have means I also have a share in this problem. And what is my share? And after a lot of deep reflection, what I got to understand was my values did not match with his values. So I said, if values are at the source of human conflicts, what's the work that's being done in this space? That was the beginning of my journey. I moved from one organization to the other only to find that I jumped from frying pan to the fire. Soon I quit the corporate world and dedicated my life to understanding values. I was picked up as a Ashoka Fellow. And as a Ashoka Fellow, I started imparting values to schools, teachers, students. And that is when I was leading a workshop for School of Social Work students, Kalpana was a student. And at the end of the workshop, she came and said, look, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. So I said, instead of 2 hands, 4 hands. Why not? And the story thereafter is a history. Because I came from the corporate world pulled me into working with them. We have worked in over 15 countries. But it was very interesting. Every other workshop, somebody would say, I wish I got this knowledge when I was young. Every third or every fourth workshop, I used to hear from some participants saying, I wish I got this when I was young. To the extent, one of the participants went and got her children, their cousins, their friends, and said, here is a group of students, do the workshop for them. And we did that and it worked very, very well. That is when we said, maybe time for us to look at how do we go and work with schools. We were very scared. Working with adults is easy, but working with the 12-year, 13-year, 14-year is not easy because they are so transparent, they will tell you on your face that you're no good. So we started with NIE, Newspaper in Education, and we used to do 40-minute classes, and we got a feeling that we will be able to do. That is when I started designing the curriculum. We had a colleague of ours by name Ramya who came from NID. She was an edutainment expert. She put all the material into how to convert education to entertainment, and the entire material was born. And that is how EFIL was born. Even the name EFIL is very interesting. When one of our facilitators went to the class and said, class, the children asked, what are you going to teach us? And he said, life. Oh, that's something that nobody talks to us about. And then we said, life turned around, EFIL, LIFE, Education for Integrating Life. I think that is very, very critical. Now I'll invite Kalpana. In this journey, I'm more a thinker, she's more a doer. Without her, I don't think we could have done what we have done, or without me, maybe there wouldn't have been a content to move and share. So I will now invite Kalpana to share what we actually do.
Thank you, Sampath. Thank you, Veena Garu, Rama Garu, all the entire fantastic team who has supported us till here, till we came onto the stage. It's very interesting that we called our program EQUBE, Enabling Evolutionary Excellence. And when we actually went into, I have been with the corporate, like what Sampath told, for almost 15, 16 years. And when we decided that we want to go to a space where it is getting formulated, rather than doing a repair job, I always felt in corporate I was doing a repair job. You know, it's not that much they can change to some extent. So when I stood one day, I honestly tell you, when I stood in those classes, and, after a few months, going and meeting those students and being with them, I truly believe when you know this is what is the purpose of your life for which you are alive, and you know that is the space where you belong, there is an avatar that is born inside each one of us, and we need to take that plunge. Otherwise, we remain in a stereotype. We remain in the spaces that is in a comfort zone we don't go out to do. And 16 years now, no looking back. It could be the worst of the times. It could be COVID times. It could be any time. My children give me the energy to go back to them again and again. And that's also true about my team, which I will share with you very soon, because nothing can be done by just both of us. We have been in 10 states. We still continue to go further spaces, more directly 1 lakh students being touched, and they have touched so many others, 80 teacher programs. But how did we even go about doing it? A whole lot of curriculum was there with us. Like the content was there. We knew we had to divide them into concepts, into tools. For maths, for science, for geography, everything you get tools. But for life, do you get tools? When you are standing in a crisis, do you get tools? Or when you have to make a choice of your career, is there any tool you can apply to yourself? That was the question. And that's what we worked. And we realized that the tools, just like how you have ABCD first and then a sentence formation and then a paragraph and comprehension, we also needed to have a top-up model. That is the model that we arrived at. So we actually moved the other way. We first did 8th, 9th, 10th, and then we said, no, we are very late. 5, 6, 7, no, we are still late now. 3, 4, yeah, we are still late, so 1 to 10. So when you really look at it, the third grade, we start with responsibility. And from understanding responsibility, we go on to the emotional awareness, but we use Navarasas. Being an artist, I knew that Navarasas from the Bharata Shastra cannot compete with anything else in the world, which actually talks about emotions. So that's what we used. And then we went on to look at value choices. We looked at mindfulness, how do you really learn to learn, and how are you understanding. They do a 20-year timeline path forward. It's a roadmap that my children put, and they put a GPS map for the next, and they also write a note to themselves, in a 60th year of my life, how I will be, where I will be, possibly. It's just a dream, it's just the path that they are writing, uncensored. That's what I tell them. Just write, let's see later whether it happens or the world is there or not. Let's look at it later, but at least you are forming your path. And 10th grade becomes the most important. Before that, we have given them, do I know who I have become? So we even give Johari window to them. You'll be surprised. That was my third year psychology class, but my students in 9th grade understand it very well. So they understand that I have to be a social being. Being a social being is what is my core. Not being in an individualistic society. And they move on to the 10th grade. 10th grade is the most important point, because in that space, all the tools, 12 tools they have got from 3rd grade onwards, it's integrated, and they do a social action project. We call it SAP, for want of a better word. And the SAP could be social action project, could be self-action project, could be school action project. They spend over 80 hours, and as of now, 750 projects a year. Total has been 5,000 plus, but they have directly touched over 1 lakh lives, and those people have touched over many, many lives. And today, very easily, it has got replaced with Seva for the CBSE schools and SUPW for the ICSE schools. But what is interesting is, on their own, when they go and say, what is the one social reason that you really want to work with, one issue, they are not looking volunteering, they are not doing charity, they are not in a whole group just going along. They are leaders, and they have to form their own group. Group could be grandparents, parents, uncle, nephew, niece, anybody, or apartment friends. They have to form their own group, and they are the leaders, and they incidentally have covered most of the SDG areas. Very surprising for us when we now divide and see what has happened. And what is even more interesting is, when we were betting on all these things, I was really wanting to know whether we are on the right path, whether it's really worthwhile. We are just moving around, going around, talking many things, running classes. That's our life. And I left that corporate space to come in to do this. We did so many World Bank projects and several other projects we did. So therefore, I wanted to know, and we took a 6-year timeline study, because both of us being doctorates, we are researchers, so it's much easier for us. So therefore, we worked on 500 students in a comparison and intervention model. And I was amazed to know that over 15.42%, there was a huge difference. It's just not that they have come into 10, so they are really good or they are really best, but they had really worked on it. But what was even more interesting for me in this whole thing is, in fact, when I said it could be a social action project or a self-action project, there's one girl who came to me for 5 years back. And she told me, ma'am, I won't be able to do SAP this year. My mother is terminally ill. So I said, yeah, I understand, but 8 years is very difficult for me. I can't go out. My dad has to be in the hospital most of the time, and I don't know what to do. I'm only child. So I said, why don't you make it into something that you can do it in a home? She said, will you accept it? I said, of course. Then the only thing I want to do is I want to keep my mom happy till the last day. I said, please go ahead, make it. And she made a bucket list. She went on with her mother, and she never used to go to earlier chemo sessions with her mother, but she decided to go now. When she went to the chemo session, she was sitting next to I told you, the roadmap. So she's sitting next to the pediatric oncology, and she promised her mother in one of the days after chemo that I will become a pediatric oncologist. She was getting 60-70% earlier in school. In 10th, she got 92%. Because there was a vision, there was a goal. The mom passed away, of course. Unfortunately, by October, she passed away. December was her presentation. But she still said that, and today she is, medical student just trying to finish. But what is very interesting for me is there's just one story. If I tell you, I have like hundreds of stories. And even more interesting is the few mothers and fathers, just as we started, zero recruitment. I am not going around searching for anybody. They walked into my office and they said, Kalpana, what is happening with you people to my children? They're asking me questions I can't answer. So I said, please come, stay with us. And they became our faculty. But what is even more interesting is 2 years back,
Two of my students suddenly called me and said, "Ma'am, I want to talk to you." And when I saw who they were, they had formulated a social entrepreneur. They are both social entrepreneurs. They're having an organization called Satara Akka. And this reaches to 30,000 government schools. The seed of this was my 10th grade SAP. And they could have gone after engineering anywhere else, but they chose to be social entrepreneurs. They didn't take up any of those jobs. They wanted to do this. And therefore, I was very intrigued. I went to LinkedIn. I looked at so many of my students, which I'd never done earlier. And what was very interesting for us is each one of them, along with their profession, are social workers today. Ananyan Sampath, who is a doctor, who's actually, in a Pittsburgh University right now, works on gender equity and works on several UN projects. And then we have Kirti Raghavendra right in the PS College. Final year started an organization called Coder Factory, which goes to the government schools and picks up children who are very good in coding, comes back and, works on that. And we have Vaibhav Kulkarni, who could negotiate with his organization that 2 months in a year, he will get off to go to Harvard under their CSR program and teach the government school children. That started in 10th grade for him. He didn't leave it. And today, Namrata Hangla, please go and look at LinkedIn. She is recruiting now. Dazzling Start started in 10th grade. 12th grade, she was a TED speaker. And today, she is, continuing that as an organization. Then we have Vibha Nadi. Vibha Nadi is another outstanding student. She started an organization called Outlawed because she became a lawyer. 5-year law program, and she has started a new program called Nyaya Mitras in this country, where 26 lawyers, including judges, are supporting her, and this goes to legal education in the rural villages. And then we have, of course, Shriya and Advait, who have joined us as faculty, who will be, all these people came, they are all our panelists for SAP presentation. Over 48 panelists I have usually every year. Out of this, last year I had 23 my own students who are across the world, in Chicago, in everywhere today, doing their profession, but actually doing something in the social work spaces. That was what is most interesting. And of course, our awesome team, they are my EFIL family, they are our family. And each one of them work, so much with their heart, because each one of us ask ourselves that if this is the last hour of my life and I'm going to go, what is it that I'm going to tell myself? Was this worth meaningful? Was this life meaningful? Was this life worth? Was this relationship worth? Did this relationship result in something as a legacy that it can leave behind, other than all the fights we have? And that is where we are as of today.
Any organization needs to have a path of its own. So I'm in my 60s. So we have our own EQUBE students who will take over from us, and EFIL will continue its journey. Well, we would like to conclude with a quote: "Education which does not mold character is absolutely worthless," told by Mahatma Gandhi. And I truly believe in that. If we are really educated, let us behave like educated people. And if we behave like educated people, you will not need any one of us to stand and share with you what we are sharing today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I think the crowning glory was 3 months back when Shriya was called by the President of India. She's been incubated by IIM for her program that she started in 10th, and then it continued right now. And, she was adjudged as one of the youngest social entrepreneurs. So what we are looking at is, we all talk about empathy and social consciousness in our life. And we think it is something that has to be taught, while it is something so innate and it has to come. So all we do is we kindle it, we open it for them, and right from 3rd grade, so many care assignments that they start doing, come from the kitchen of their house, from their outside garden, to the community, to everywhere, so that when they come to 10th, they are able to take over the mantle themselves and say, this is where my life really lies, and this is my vision, and this is what I want to work on. Irrespective of profession, I can still be a social being, I can still be a social worker, I can still make a difference. So that is what is EFIL all about for all of you.